Well, my name is Robert Perez, but most people call me Rob. I'm 24 years old. I'm the student director at the West Kendall campus. I was born in Peru, but then I moved to Miami when I was around 2. I really enjoy watching, playing soccer. I really enjoy reading books. And I'm also a middle school teacher. Yeah. Yeah, so I have a mom and dad. Their names are Julia and Roberto. And they were originally born in Peru. They met in Peru, fell in love in Peru. And I have 3 sisters, 3 older sisters. I'm the youngest one. My older sister's name is Cynthia, second is Natalie, and the third is Wendy. Cynthia and Natalie are married, have kids. They live here. Natalie lives in North Carolina, and Wendy just moved back to Miami from Washington, D.C. I have my oldest niece. She's actually starting high school now. Her name is Shanti. My second sister is pregnant with her 3rd child, Selena. Her oldest daughter is Virginia, and the only other boy that was born in our family is Sean Tapper Jr. Yeah, and Wendy doesn't have kids yet. Do I have any favorites? So I feel like my oldest niece has definitely a soft spot because she was my first niece. But also I think because Sean's the only guy, we're just kids too. So I really enjoy just being with him as well. And we tend to just bond a lot faster, I guess. So, I mean, I don't remember much. I was a kid, but I remember my folks tried to come to America, for better opportunity. And there's a huge difference between my age and my sister's age. Like my oldest 2 sisters are like, plus 10 years older than me. And so they remember a lot more. But what I can remember is we tried coming here because there were job opportunities and things to help our family out. And things didn't really work out in the end. And so me and my mom and my 3 sisters ended up staying in Miami, but my father ended up going back to Peru. So like as a kid, it didn't really click yet. And so I have pictures of me and my family on my birthday while we were celebrating over here where like, it's like, there's a picture with you and your mom, with the family. And then like there's a picture with me and my dad, and it's like me talking on the phone. And that's what my mom would take because that's what we would have for my birthday sometime. That eventually sadly led to divorce between them and so many things. But it was weird and hard, not as a kid, because as a kid, everything's like happy-go-lucky and you love mom and dad. But as I started getting older, I really started realizing the gaps and also, I guess, the holes that was leaving in me as a young man. So my mom was the believer in our family. In Peru, she came to know Jesus and the gospel. She even says like that I remind her a lot of how she was younger because she was in like young adults. Like she would go tell people about Jesus, invite all that stuff. And so when she came to the States with me and my sisters, immediately she got us plugged into a Baptist church right across Ludlam Elementary School. I would go there and then I would come back after school and I would stay there with her. She used to work at the daycare there and we could go there on Sundays. And so I grew up in church my whole life, but I guess none of it really made sense at first, because you're a kid, you don't understand a lot of things. But what I remember is every single time the preacher, the pastor would share the gospel or talk about hell and eternity, like I would always feel convicted. And then in middle school and high school, it was the same feeling in that stardom. And I was exposed to God in a big way, and I would have many encounters. And I truly believe that I gave my life to Jesus when I was younger. I just think I never knew what that meant fully, how to live with him and to learn his word and to be discipled. But I truly believe I knew Jesus, I knew Jesus. Well, I was very much the typical Christian kid that on Sundays, super Christian, super holy, and then on youth nights, right? But then Monday through Friday in school, I was cussing, trying to get at girls, very prideful, arrogant, even talk back a lot at home and just rebel. And so I was living a very much of a double life, and then in college it just got insanely worse. I got into a relationship with someone that I met at church, and we just ended up in sin. We ended up in very bad sexual immorality, and it's crazy because during that season of life, like I was playing on the worship team at the time, and I couldn't believe that God was allowing me to do this. I was like, how can God allow me to do this, living in sin, knowing all these things? And the crazy part is that, I understood what sin was. I understood all these things, but yet, I truly believe like this is how God was transforming me. Sometimes He lets you have what you think you want in order to show you that it's not it. You're just filling a hole and a gap that only God can. And so it's crazy because from that, I ended up trying to actually read my Bible. Like I remember I would put a timer on my phone every day, and I would be like reading the book of Job, and I was like, this is depressing, and trying to learn all these things. And then I'll never forget, one time I was at a youth fit in Hammocks area, and I was there and in this funk, still dating this girl. And I truly felt like as I was on the treadmill, like God said, leave and go to your apartment. And I did. I felt so bad, like I left her there on the Stairmaster. She got home safely. But I remember walking into my apartment that day and just crying my eyes out. I truly believe that was the presence of God overwhelming me with His love and Him breaking me. And I remember like praying like a very sincere, real prayer of like, God, if this is real, if you're real, help me to do what I can. Because I need you, like if this is real, show me who you are. And since that moment, since that day, like God has completely transformed everything. Like a week later, I broke up with her, and I was invited to a new church, this church actually. My friend Isaac invited me to young adults. And within that whole week, I met Mark Hutchinson, one of our former student directors, and Pastor Van. And I was discipled and mentored. I remember I didn't know anything about God's word, or let alone that God had a plan for me to teach it and to be a leader and all these things that I would never have described myself as or even wanted or thought about. And little by little, like God was showing me, making real that prayer, that He was real, He was evident in my life, and He was gonna help me to do what I couldn't. And so it's been a beautiful journey of many still mistakes and lessons, but there's no doubt in my mind that that was one of those moments in my life that I look back on and I'm like God helped me, God changed me. So what's crazy is during that time, God was transforming me, all those things. My parents ended up getting remarried after 13 years of divorce, right? And it was weird because, I thought that I was cool with it. I was like happy, whatever. But there was still something in me that was holding on to some bitterness, I would even say hatred, and some hurt that was caused, And, the Bible reminds us that we are commanded to forgive others the way the Lord has forgiven us. And mind you, I think my father still hadn't become a believer yet. He now is a believer, which is beautiful to see God change him and transform him. But I'll never forget, and I really had to do it was kind of weird, I had to do some therapy, in my heart and really see what was going on. But I remember anytime I would bring up the story of my dad or my father, it just always made me uncomfortable or tugged me the wrong way. And then I realized I hadn't truly forgiven my dad. And the reason is that I even think that's one of the main reasons why I struggled so much to even believe in God as I was growing up. Going to church, Father's Day, which every church tends to do, is that they kind of spotlight the dads and their families. I was always that kid in church on Father's Day that had to sit down in the pew and everybody else got to take a family photo or got to go to the front, And so even though maybe I repressed a lot of that, that was building hurt, that was building wounds. And I think maybe one of the main things that really bugged me the most about God was probably one of the ways we refer to God is Father, our heavenly, perfect Father. And so a big thing for me was how can I trust or believe a heavenly perfect father if my own father didn't want me, you know? And so it was tied, and it was tied in such a big way. And then coming to know the Lord, and even my mom and people telling me like you don't really talk to your dad, you don't hang out with your dad. And so God had to, one, show me that, but two, then get me to the point where I was ready to truly forgive. And I'll never forget, one time we went to have lunch together. It was me, my mom, and my dad. And this is when I had committed to doing ministry. And at first he was super not okay, or like he was, sketchy about it. He's an old school Hispanic guy. And so he's like, how are you gonna provide? Like, how are you gonna survive? And I remember that day talking to him, and our relationship from that moment when he was getting back into my life had really been like, small talk, like, you're my dad, I'm your son, but that's pretty much it. He didn't know much about me, and I didn't know much about him, and it's because of just the distance, and we hadn't been in each other's lives. And by the time he came back, I was already so grown. I guess he also felt that, what could he say or what could he do? He felt like he missed out a lot. And so that's what we try to work on now. But I remember that day just talking to them, and I was honest. I was like, hey, like, divorce really messed me up. Like, you not being there messed me up. Like, I was sharing so many things that, like, I didn't even know was there. Like, Dad, like, no one taught me how to shave. Like, I didn't know who to call. I was like, I graduated and I did all these things, and you weren't there, And I had to just tell him that. And as I was tying that, I was getting very emotional. He was getting very emotional, because I know for a long time with all of us, with not just me, but all of his kids, he feels that weight of just like I've abandoned my family, But what's crazy from that moment, after sharing my heart, but then saying like, but Dad, I love you. I forgive you, like I really want this to go, because God's already taken that on the cross, and if he's forgiven me for everything, like I should be able to forgive you. And that was such a healing moment for me. And honestly, it really saw me see God in a whole different light. And I just remember my mom, crying, and my dad crying there, and we apologized. He's like, I'm sorry, But the beautiful part about that is just like, healing isn't supposed to feel good. At times, it hurts. But what's beautiful from that is that because that has passed now, there's nothing keeping us from now starting a new relationship. And I love my dad. I love that. I'll never forget when he became a believer, I had to preach one time in Spanish here, and I was freaking out. And it's the little things, that make it so joyful for me with God. Like maybe, for the people, that have grown up with mom and dad, like it doesn't surprise you to wake up hearing your mom and dad laugh in the kitchen. Like it doesn't surprise you to hear your dad walk into the door, or, be woken up by him as you're sleeping, or even be annoyed by him. Like it doesn't surprise you, it's part of your life. Like I never had that. I missed out on all those things, and like I can't wait to one day do that to my kids, because I never knew what that was like. I never really knew what that was like. I remember he took time, and this was the first time in my life I think I've ever heard my dad pray for me. Every time my mom and my dad would pray, my mom would always be the one praying for me. But he knew I had to preach in a couple hours in Spanish. And right there in Spanish, he was saying the Lord's Prayer, Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, all these things. And in that moment, like I cried. It was beautiful. Like it was a basic, simple prayer, but the fact that it came from my dad meant so much, And so I'm glad that was part of my journey too. And honestly, like, to I think a lot of people, even if your parents haven't been divorced, but maybe you have hurt, I would say, forgiveness has already been given by God, but two, you gotta forgive, you gotta let go. If not, you're just keeping yourself in something that God's already opened, the cage is open. But yeah, now him and I, we're excited about the World Cup that's coming up and everything. Like, we're really sad Peru didn't make it, but yeah, I love my dad, and what I love most is that he's he's now not just being a dad, but he's being a husband to my mom. And I love the way he treats her. I love the way they are together. And more importantly, I love that God's changed both of us, you know? My name is Rob, and I am revived.